A lot of moving pieces right now in Ukraine. Of course, over the past few days, we heard from the United States side that they were actively pushing the Ukrainian government and Vladimir Zelensky towards peace talks. Then we heard from Zelensky, no peace talks. And then Moscow confirmed, no, there's been no talk of peace. And then in the past 24 hours, we've been hearing that Zelensky is open to peace talks. So we'll talk about that. There was also a foiled terrorist attack that unfolded in Kherson. 9 Ukrainians have been captured by Russian forces. So what was that terrorist attack all about? Is it similar to what we saw along the grain corridor, or maybe the Nord Stream pipeline attacks, maybe the assassination of Daria Dugina? All of those questions we have for today. We want to bring in one of the finest journalists in the world, George Eliason. He's an independent journalist, American, living in Donbass for, I think, more than a decade, if I'm not mistaken, George. Yeah. He's just been doing incredible reporting during this war. He's one of the few journalists that I trust, and I want to bring in George now to talk about all of that and more. George, welcome to Redacted.
Thank you for having me, Clayton. It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. So first, I guess a couple of things. Let's talk about what do we know about this terrorist attack? This unfolded over the past 24 hours in Kherson. And it seems like the attacks, at least in the Donbass, in Donetsk, in those areas, have intensified over the past few weeks. And a lot of wondering whether Russian President Vladimir Putin is going to launch this massive offensive. Are they waiting for the ground to freeze? So first of all, what do we know about this terrorist attack, and what are the latest developments in the Donbass where you live?
Well, it's not a specific attack. What they were doing was going to target the administration officials in Kherson. So, an exact point of attack wasn't established, but the materials for that were. They got all the explosives, detonators, all the materials for that. It's not as uncommon as you think, and it hasn't just started. This has been going on for quite a while over time. The reason for Kherson right now, where things are stepping up, is because of the midterms in the United States and the possible switch over in government. They need to get a big victory, or they need to get into a lot of trouble. And I'm talking about Ukraine. So this is one way they can soften up people's resolve to resist an attack and grab headlines. The entire time, now we're looking at since 2014, so we're looking at 8 years going on 9 now. This has been always about terrorist attacks here. It's very rare that the Ukrainians attack military formations. And, it sounds, pretty odd for, they've been at war for almost 9 years, but they've been concentrating on civilian structures, apartments, schools, hospitals, maternity wards are a favorite. What do you exclude or include as a terrorist attack at that point?
Right.
From where do you go from there? I guess there's restrooms on the Kerch Bridge. They found grenades in one of those. So what we're looking at isn't really a step up in terms of intensity. They're just increasing the breadth of the attacks.
So you've seen attacks continue over the past couple of weeks. We've been covering the mounting attacks in Donetsk. What can you tell us about the attacks? And it seems like you're seeing, are they more intense over the past couple of weeks?
The frequency a bit, like I said, it's to grab news right now. If the Republicans gain the House and the Senate, they can't afford to lose support. And that's what this is about. Now, you asked about the peace negotiations. It's the same thing. Since 2015, Minsk was on the table. And Ukraine signed that Minsk agreement under Poroshenko, then rejected it. They've never implemented it. But every time they needed to grab headlines, they were negotiating peace again. And following that, there was another major attack. So this is probably the prelude to, something large.
When you say something large, what do you mean? A major mobilization or actual peace? Because to me, it could go either way, right? Large to me would be, wow, we could have peace, or the 300 plus thousand troops that Putin has amassed ready to go. That's the large part.
Well, think of it this way: a dirty bomb. That's large in terms of media impact.
Right, right.
Right? That's large. Blame it on Russia, which isn't going to have them. This is big in terms of, I guess, foreshadowing a big mobilization on Ukraine's part. They've decided they need to take Kherson. And Ukraine, once again, is ready to sacrifice all these soldiers, whatever soldiers they have left. And I'm putting it in those terms because more and more and more, the actual military aspect of Ukraine is coming from outside Ukraine. They suffered so many casualties; it's just crazy at this point, and they don't care. They need to keep this war going.
And the United States appears to be doing that. We've been covering on the show. We've had Colonel Douglas Macgregor on talking about the one-star general that was going to be put in place of this Ukrainian command. That now has upped to a three-star commander. A three-star general is now being put in place for the dispersion of weapons and command in Ukraine. So the United States is ramping up on that side, and it seems to be in keeping with what you're saying here, maybe trying to score a major victory in Kherson or some other spot to show back home that, hey, we're actually winning. We're actually doing something. All of your money going into Ukraine is being used for something.
No, exactly. And, this isn't, this is developing. I haven't seen anything to confirm it yet, but they're on a timetable for the next couple of weeks in Kherson to actually kick things up. The reason they need Kherson is they need to get close enough to Crimea to lob artillery at it and rockets. It puts them in range.
So you see ramped up attacks. If Kherson is then captured, then launching attacks into Crimea.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's what they would do.
And so what will the Russian response be? I mean, we've been hearing about this 300,000 plus mobilization, which continues in ready to go. Colonel Macgregor has told us on our show it's a couple of more weeks there until it seems that the ground would be frozen enough for them to launch this. It just seems odd. I mean, it's from someone from the outside watching and seeing Vladimir Putin sitting back, going to different conferences and giving different speeches, and seeing all of these attacks ramping up throughout the Donbass. Putin's not sitting back. I mean, maybe that appears that way. Are the Russians just sort of sitting back and waiting, or are we seeing an equal attack back and forth at this level?
Well, they're sitting back right now.
Okay, they are. Okay.
The MacArthur Macgregor, is exactly right about the soil conditions here. It's been raining and raining and raining. And if you try to run tanks over these soils, you're going to end up digging out a meter of mud.
Wow.
Every time you go to move. It's just, that's what the conditions are like. Topsoil here goes down probably 3 meters. You're looking at 12 feet in some conditions. It's really, really deep black earth. So the military aspect of this during the spring and during the fall, it makes it very, very difficult. Winter months, and the only thing he's not quite right about is the timeline, because it's going to take. They're not expecting the first real frost here, and that's not a deep frost. That's just surface for probably another 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And then after that, I mean, you still need time for that frost to settle in. So you'd be looking at towards the middle of December, possibly as late December, before it's actually, great conditions. Now, I don't think Russia's going to wait that long. The mobilization that they're doing right now is, 300,000 troops, equipping them, making sure they're trained, making sure that you have the support there, okay, all the way back. So, food, clothing, etc. It's a lot of work. getting them into place, it's a lot of work. And then you have the turnout because the troops there are more than likely leaving. So it's a complete changeover. Even that takes time. And for that kind of number, it's, not a day or a week, but a couple of weeks in itself. The troops need to get, the lay of the land, etc. So, now we're looking into December.
So we didn't have a red wave in the United States like Republicans had hoped for. It looks like the Senate will remain in Democrat control. Republicans will take the House of Representatives. President Biden's still in power. So and Mitch McConnell will likely then become would not become the Senate Majority Leader. Still, that retains power for Chuck Schumer on Chuck Schumer's side. So there is this deadlock, but there is this agreement, of course, between both of these parties, these warmongering parties, to continue to flood Ukraine with weapons and money. So we've been hearing about peace talks. The U.S. and Russia to hold nuclear talks. That's one piece from the State Department. But actual peace talks, Zelensky now saying that they are open to peace talks. What have you make of that from where what you're hearing on your side?
Zelensky absolutely doesn't want peace talks. He set his condition for peace talks himself. Russia has to take their army and go back to Russia. Crimea and Donbass have to be returned to Ukraine, and then he'll discuss terms. That's his concession.
And that won't happen.
Well, you've got the fact that, you have two independent republics here now. Whether Ukraine likes it or not, neither republic is ever going back to Ukraine, especially not after the treachery the Ukrainians committed against them.
Right.
Think of it this way. You've got a sitting president, okay, whether you like him or not, okay, he's voted in. There's a coup, he's ousted. Now, your entire region still supports the president that was elected. So then all these tanks start coming down. People are being murdered all over the place, okay? And they're telling you have to accept this political thought of the same people that killed your grandfathers and grandmothers under Adolf Hitler. And that's all you have to do is deny everything in your family's history was good, and you can be a part of Ukraine again.
Unbelievable. Well, George, we want to have you back on. I know we're going to do a deep dive a little bit later on your latest revelations about the Nord Stream pipeline. We're going to have you back on real soon. I wanted to thank you for joining us today, though, to bring us the very latest on these peace talks, the mobilization, and all of that. Where can people find out your writings and production of videos as well, and your journalism, George?
Oh, gosh. A lot of the sites were actually taken down because of the info war. YouTube, just George Eliason. I've got a show on TNT Radio. As far as writing, the best place to go is Muck Rack. Unfortunately, a lot of the articles you have to put in the Wayback Machine because the sites are gone. Some of them were top 50 sites worldwide, and they destroyed them. So it is what it is right now.
Right. Well, we'll link that up in our show description. George Eliason, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us here on Redacted.
Thank you so much for having me, Clayton.
My pleasure. And thanks to George, one of the great journalists. And it's so amazing. Like, he does this amazing reporting and he gets blocked, censored, can't find his articles. They block it everywhere on these websites. But some reporting that we wanted to bring you, because just over the past few hours, this is still a fluid situation, but the Ministry of Defense in Russia is now officially saying that Russia is pulling its troops out of the frontline city of Kherson. And this, of course, has been unfolding for the past few weeks, moving civilians out of the area. Now, get ready for the media spin tomorrow morning, guys. Wake up and flip on CNN and read your Washington Post and read your New York Times. And the way that the Western media is, of course, going to spin this is that this is a major victory for Ukraine.
Or they will call it a retreat,
right.
That they are retreating.
Russia retreats.
Yes, absolutely. Without mentioning that by some estimates, Ukraine has lost 12,000 soldiers in October alone, by some reports. Russia says that they have losses too, but they're trying to actually minimize those losses by this withdrawal, and that their losses in October according to Russian reports, are 7 to 8 times lower.
Yeah, and so already around 115,000 people had been evacuated over the past few weeks. We've been covering that here on the show. All remaining troops will go to the left of the banks of the Dnieper River, and this is the important part of this. Now you're separated by a river. And this is largely seen as sort of the symbolic way in which peace talks might unfold. Okay, move them across the Dnieper River, and then we would actually have maybe a discussion of peace. Okay, there we have the river separating us. Let's actually sit down at the table now. And the way that Russia is looking at this, according to sources I've been speaking to tonight, they're seeing this as a way of protecting their armor and they're protecting their soldiers. And this is purely a military strategy move. It's not a political move. It's a military strategy move to pull soldiers back, pull their armament back, and they've basically turned over the city. They've already taken down Russian flags. They have already removed their Russian flags from buildings. So this is going to be arguably Ukrainian territory again very, very soon. And then, as George points out, this may be the staging ground for where they then try to lob attacks into Crimea. And if they do that, of course, then they will be met with massive, massive casualties and massive resistance from Russia attacking them.
I mean, think of the people who just lived in that area, though, that their house now has gone from Ukraine to Russia to Ukraine again, and now is just complete war zone,
right,
in the most literal sense. And that's just so awful to think about.
So it's interesting, Eva Bartlett talking tonight about this and saying, this is going to be looked upon perhaps. They'll spin it as like a major sort of political blow for Russia. That's what they'll say. And I think that this is going to be an interesting way to look at how. Just thinking about all these different moving pieces with Kherson and how this unfolds over the next few days. But it's going to be, you're going to see it in Western newspapers that this is a retreat for Russia. This is a political win for Ukraine. But there's one important point, though, I think that is being lost in all of this, which is that now Ukraine has nowhere else to it. Like, they can't advance and have a major win, like on the field, on the battlefield at this point.
Because
now
of the river, is that what you mean? Yeah.
They're separate. So this is... I think I saw earlier tonight Brian Berletic saying that this is a great point, that this is the moment now where you have this is the last major offensive that could have been captured by Ukraine, could have captured Russian armament in a major attack. So now they've literally removed this from their chessboard. So then what comes in the next few weeks when the ground freezes? That's anybody's guess at this point, I guess. Well, we'll see. So that's the very latest on that.